Om apiyantu mamangani vak pranashchakshuhu shrotra matra balamindriyani cha sarvani. Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Mahabrahma Nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakaroda Nirakara Namastva Nirakaranam Beastu Tadatmani Nirate Ya Upanishatsu Dharmaste Mayi Shantu Te Mayi Shantu Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. May our bodies experience perfect health. May our life force, the prana, flow unimpeded. And may our minds expand in their capacity to know Brahman. For the Upanishads state that all existence is Brahman. Therefore, may we never deny Brahman, and may Brahman never deny us. May there be no rejection ever of Brahman, of we who are dedicated to the realization of the Atman within. May all the divine qualities cited in the Upanishads also abide within us. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. We have now opened the doors to Sharda Loka, Ramakrishna Loka, Vivekananda Loka, that is SRV associations, and you have joined us in this miraculous age where we can be in each other's presence, as it were, on the screen, even though we're thousands of miles separate. Some of you looking in from Hungary, from Iceland, from Hawaii, from India, from Europe, places in the United States, East Coast, West Coast. As you come and go and see these talks that we give, these Dharma talks, you can see how dedicated we are, particularly to that one effort, that one principle, how to describe the tattvas at all levels. Tattva just meaning principles, everything from the 5 elements, as we'll look at a little today, and on into the mind, and what connects the mind in the title of our class here, Manaha Prana Sambandha. Sambandha means a relationship, and we want to have that relationship connected, or in the case of maybe many beings today, reconnected, so that we can live a spiritual life that has more than just outer implications with karmas, and realize that there are inner implications like samskaras, that is, impressions that adhere to our mind, that bring us from birth to death, and death to birth, or from formlessness into form, and from form back to formlessness. If you want to put it a little bit less dire terms, just think of divine play rather than falling into the clutches of ignorance and Maya. So the mind has to take on several different perspectives for this, and maybe hold more than one ideal. Certainly there's an eternal goal, or a supreme goal, paragatam, as was said by Lord Buddha. Gatam, gatam, paragatam. So there are other goals that you can have that can lead to that, as long as they're aligned in the Dharma. So this is why we come back and speak the Dharma, give discourses on the Dharma through the years. Some 30 or more years now, SRV's been doing that. We have a large collection of them now. You can look at them in different venues. And also are continuing to put up pieces of divine music, devotional song, stotram, on YouTube, so that there's another avenue, the Bhakti avenue, open to us all, that we can mix that with the Jnanam in the terms of 2 wings of a bird, that it's very hard for a bird to get off the ground with just 1 wing. Repeating Swami Sheshanandaji's words from the podium, my Guru, peace and bliss be upon him. So if you remember back some 6 weeks or more, we started off this subject of mantra and karma, or how mantra can destroy or neutralize karmas. course, first of all, we mean the negative ones. We also mean neutral ones or mixed ones, and also even go beyond the good ones, which are gold chains, as we heard from our Swami Vivekananda. And they can bind you to heaven-seeking and to virtue and vice, because it's very impossible, as Krishna says in the Gita, to have good without bad, like a good world only. We know that's really a naive concept for children to think about. But as you mature more and more, this is why you want to transcend dualities like good and bad, pleasure and pain. Which gets me on into talking about Dharma at its different levels, almost spontaneously. But back to the point I was making, we want to look back some weeks now and see that we took on that 21 points of mantra practice in the first class. Remember that chart that, just like the one we're seeing and using as our main chart, went around in a kind of circle around the chart, showing us how there were 21 different points to the practice of the mantra, as has been cited by the seers in both Vedanta and Tantra, and mentioned in Yoga Darshana. And that had 4 phases to it, if you remember. We had it from the outward to the inner, to the transcendent, to the beyond the transcendent, as we'll look at the 3 nadis today that take us into the Turyatita state or Jivan Mukta state. So we had that as Para, Pashanti, Madhyama, and Vaikari. So remember, the Vaikari stage is where most people are starting in their mantra practice, and there's a few things to qualify yourself there to really make the mantra burn, work, operate. And then you went to a stage that was Madhyama, which is a middling set of practices, more internal now, external than internal. And then you went to a stage that was called Pashanti. So that had to do with approaching tattvas, as I was talking about, that are much more subtle, that most people don't even think about nowadays, and that are quite a surprise to people when they come upon them inside themselves, because this is an inward ascension process, an involution, as we talk about so much. And then also it reaches a para stage, not a para, but a para stage, the supreme stage, where you go beyond mantra practice. And so mantra was there to protect you first, as you divorced yourself from mayic things, from things that need to be put behind thee, as Christ said, devilish things. And then after a while it became a neutralizer of karmas. You gave it long enough time in you to practice it, knowing its meaning, and connecting it to the deity that your guru gave you with it. Then over years, 5-10 years of that kind of practice, because some people are thinking it should work within a month or a year, a couple of years, but you give it a longer time of practice, and then it turns into a kind of bubbling spring of ambrosia, to quote one song in India. And we saw our founder, Lexixen, that way quite often when we were with him. He was saying the mantra all the time. And I see, sometimes you see the monks in different forms of India, monasticism and Buddhism, their lips are moving, and upampshu, they're not saying it out loud, but they're muttering it. And then sometimes they just take it inside. And so you know that actually the 3 phases of uttering it outwardly, muttering it with the lips, and thinking it inside are also 3 kinds of a triputi, 3 kinds of practice that go with the mantra. But we didn't cover those 6 or 7 weeks ago in the first class of this series. But we did cover how there were 4 aspects of the Divine Mother that guided those 4 particular stages over the whole 21 aspect mantra path that was put together in 3 different charts I showed you. Beautiful. The mantra alone is just another realm. It's another world. It has been given mere lip service. It has been used in a menu tasting kind of way, merit badge kind of, I've got this mantra, that mantra kind of way. But if you see it in the traditional way, which you should, get it from an illumined soul and practice it over with these Dharma teachings as your guide, and don't falter and keep going forward, as Sri Ramakrishna said, then it culminates. And we've seen that happen in souls who lived in our very lifetime. So we're not just taking the word of dead presidents, as they say, or dead luminaries. We saw this happening because we've lived long enough, 50, 60, 70 years, so that we've seen people, the maturation process of mantra happen to them, and they've talked about it to us. So that was the first series of classes. I'm just reminding your mind of it. This is the second class of part 2 of this series, and after Sunday is over, we are going to go on a retreat, be there on the West Coast. We'll see the West Coast devotees there for classes on the Amrita Nada Upanishad, and at this retreat we'll study the Annapurna Upanishad, so you can see how devoted we are to the Vedanta, Veda Anta. What came after the Vedas was the Anta, which is the Upanishads. There's about 108 of them left. So this is what we're dedicated to speaking about, talking about, ruminating upon, and realizing the truths in those. It's the inner path. These are markers on the path going inward. Along the path you have these great slokas, sutras, scriptures, suras, however you will call them in different religious traditions, the revealed scriptures. So this is the second of that mantra karma series, we're calling it. After we take this break, this will be the final class of part 2. We have already planned a part 3 with the chart we're about to show you here. Might as well jump into it and use our time wisely, which is called connecting the living prana to the luminous mind. So we're not talking about just the food prana alone, which starts us off, or we're not talking about just the ordinary mind, however you would define that word ordinary. But we're talking about 2 very special facets of spiritual life which give us an internal life. So prana being one of them, as Vivekananda said, oh, I see here in the West you don't know about the prana yet, and you don't know about the tanmatras. I hope to have time to show you both about the pranas and the tanmatras today. So that's a review for you, and so we'll take a few weeks off, and you can see those Amrita Nada Upanishad classes 2 Sundays from now, and we'll be in Portland giving those, broadcasting live from our ashram there, and you can take those beautiful teachings from that Upanishad. And then the retreat will be there, not broadcast, but you're certainly welcome to come join us on retreat. And in that case, we will enter into part 3 of this and try and finish this chart, which you're seeing right now, I hope, on your screens. This is that chart of connecting the living prana to the luminous mind. And where we left off with it. We've taken quite a lot of time, actually, for the people of this day and age, those of us who aren't necessarily that akamai. I know I'm giving you a lot of Sanskrit words, but that's a Hawaiian word. It means in the know. We're not that akamai about Dharma in the West in these days and times, because our parents weren't grown with it, and their parents didn't give it to them, so we haven't got it till we went looking for gurus, and we got outside the confines of conventional religion, and most of us found something that attracts us there that resembled the truth. Or maybe it was a faint echo of the truth. Morality and ethics being something that were just a part of that truth, leading us to a deeper level, and this chart is very good as far as leading us there. So we've spent a lot of time, if not too much, although you probably could spend more and still benefit from it, with this whole top line of the chart. Food, gain strength, increase your stamina, master your posture, purify your senses, which we looked at last week, and equalize your breathing. Then you get to knowledge of the prana. Then, to go ahead quickly, you purify that prana because it can be spiked and have valleys. It's still subject to the gunas, in other words. Then you control the prana, you raise it and focus it, and then you come into holy company with it. I would say right there, if you could do all of that before you frequented holy company, that would be a traditional way of doing it, and you'd be qualified when you come there. The cows wouldn't drive the horses away from the herd then, as Sri Ramakrishna said about people who are not qualified coming into spiritual circles. They're not yet akamai yet or ready for it. But if you could accomplish this much with your food and with your life force, and begin to seek intuitively, like the chart we had last week, oh, I think I have an intuition that this world is not real, or there's a wool pulled over my eyes here when I was born, and oh, I'm beginning to see that suffering permeates everything, like Buddhism says in the first level of teaching. There is suffering. And then everything's not all right in wherever they say it is, Holland or something. There's a strange smell of Maya everywhere. And so I need to have an intuition that takes me deeper than that. So that's where you head for holy company, sadhu satsanga. And that is where we will concentrate today on some prana teachings. Before we, or to introduce us into the prana, let's show this chart, because I told you last week about it. We are bringing up these words about purification, both of food. We purify food first, then we purify our energy, right? Mukhya prana comes from that, we said. And then we purify, and this is all on the way to purifying the mind, or reaching back to pure mind again. Now we have to purify this life force that comes out of food. So this is where you're raising energy up the spine. That's why your posture needs to be straight, your breathing needs to be equal. It's just like saying to the Kundalini Shakti, okay, I'm ready for you now, instead of, oh, what's that coming at me out of nowhere and causing me to flip out, to have experiences before my time. Maybe she's testing me or something like that. And so all of this might have a place in your ongoing spiritual life at an early stage, better than to greet her, just like you'd greet any respect person, by putting yourself together, putting on good clothes, ironing them, washing them. So this is a kind of spiritual life preparation you do to meet the Mother Shakti inside of you. Meetings with the great master, with the great swan, is one great book in our tradition, written by our founder, Lex Tickman. So you have to prepare yourself to meet the Shakti. So in this way, this is what you're doing when you purify things. So here is a way in which we should look at purity and impurity, because it's not the same as we were raised in the morality and ethics level of teaching, which is all fine and good. But when you study the yamas and niyamas of yoga, which are kind of the morals and ethics of yoga, of Ashtanga yoga, 8-limbed yoga, you see that there has something that's leaning towards something a little different. Rather than thou shalt not kill, you have, say, ahimsa, which tells you thou cannot kill, because nothing was ever born. All of a sudden, you're thinking along a whole different track. This prana cannot die. It was never born. It's life force that's flowing through hundreds and thousands of nadis in the collective mind, in the cosmic mind. You're just seeing a very tip of the iceberg of it here in the individual mind and feeling it, you see. And you're maybe associating that feeling with objects only. And then you need to associate it with a relationship you can have with higher mind, the deeper wisdom in you. You know, Swami Vivekananda said a very beautiful thing. Education, which is what we're so tied up with in the West as something higher, education is the manifestation of knowledge that is already within you. Well, that's taking a teaching that has moral, ethical implications necessarily, and putting a non-dual spin on it. Education is the manifestation of the knowledge that's already within you. And devotion and love, what's that? The manifestation of the divinity which is already within you. So then what's the prana? It's the manifestation of the Shakti, the Divine Mother, who resides always within you. So you need to have these Advaitic things said to you so that you're not thinking in a conventional, ordinary way anymore. You've really parted company with that level of thinking, lower knowledge. Lower knowledge is good for making money, but you need to keep the focus on para vidya, the paragatam, the extreme, the superior goal, the supreme goal. So let's look at this chart then in our time, so you can see what purity and impurity means here, because there's a triputi, there's an admixture of purity and impurity too. And notice how it's not pointed at you like a rifle of guilt, shame, and sin, and virtue. Because virtue and vice are another duality that are giving a lot of people problems. There's a song in India by Ram Prasad, Mother Wisdom escapes every being who thinks virtue and vice to be real. So if you're limiting yourself to these dvandva mohena, moha means delusion, and dvandva means two. If you're limiting yourself to the delusion which these pairs of opposites throw off of you out of Maya, out of nature all the time, then you're limiting your spiritual life to just one nadi. We'll look at that in a minute, how these great nerves, these power nerves that conduct prana to Shakti, move inward towards a higher goal still. So this means we have to kind of redo our thinking in that. So here's a quote at the top. In Indian philosophy, the terms pure and impure do not necessarily correspond to morality and immorality. Here, the word impure does not mean dirty or corrupt, but rather what is distinct from reality. I'm sorry, what is distant from reality. Well, either way will work. Because reality is ever pure. Therefore, mind and its ego-tainted knowledge, energy in constant flux and change, and dense matter, these are all considered impure, being that they are conditioned and limited. Beyond them and transcendent of time and space is pristine awareness. So what it's saying here is the farther flung things are from Brahman, God, Allah, Great Spirit, reality, the more impure they are. So impure is not a judgment there. It's just a matter of distance. They're far away. The tattvas are far away, like earth, air, fire, water, and ether, as we will see here when I take you through that quickly. But the closer they come in, then they're mixed. That's called Shuddha, Ashuddha, and Shuddha Shuddha. So the mixed things are Shuddha Shuddha. They're a mixture of pure and impure. What are those? I'd like to know. I'll show you in a minute. And then there's this innate purity in things, Shuddha. And so they're the closest. You'll see those in a minute. Inherently pure by nature. Let's start at the bottom of the chart then. You can see there on the right-hand lower corner the impure tattvas. They are deha, body. You can see them in the box defined there. Mahabhutas, the five great elements, air, earth, fire, water, and ether. Kama, desire. That's, of course, all of these can be unwrapped. Indriyas, the senses, are considered impure. Why? Mundaka Upanishad, because they're outgoing by nature. So we have to, remember looking back on this chart, we have to purify them. And we went through that last week. Go back and connect all of these classes and watch them several times. And then there's the tanmatras, which I'll show you in a minute. These are those things that Vivekananda said we didn't have knowledge of. Tanmatras defined here as the five elements, but they're in a subtle state. Oh, where's that subtle state? In the antakarana, which comes next. The mind is also impure by nature when it's dual. If you can purify it with practices like meditation, study of wisdom, scriptures, non-duality and so forth, then it's original mind. But you're starting out with ordinary mind, om. It's a lower om. And then you're going to a larger om. There's like two sticks, the Upanishad says, that you rub together to get fire. You rub together the lower things with the higher things, and sparks strike. There's a metaphor there in the Upanishads about that. So we're trying to recover this original mind, which Sri Ramakrishna says is God. And Lord Buddha said, Buddha mind is Buddha nature, is Tattagar, he used pragya param in the scriptures, supreme intelligence. So there you see the world caught in between there, these two things. It's a combination of ashuddha, impure tattvas, and shuddha, mixed pure and impure tattvas. And you see the moniker on it, nama rupa. It's the jagat. Jagat, the world, is composed of name and form. So then there's a dotted line, and on the left you see these mixed pure and impure tattvas. Shuddha, they're called. That starts with the individual soul, Purusha, raga, you can see it defined there, power of attraction. So that's associated with desire, but it's the desire for deeper things. And then vidya, knowledge of differentiation, that is, you're separating the wheat from the chaff and knowing there are such divisions as the real and the unreal, or the supreme and the relative. You're making these distinctions between the wheat and the chaff. Kala is there, that's time, and phases of time, kalas. Those are also mixed. You can hardly say that that things that happen in time are always pure and good. So that's the idea. But you could say that when time's gone, nothing happens. So there must be a state of higher purity beyond time and its phases, which is again, like Lord Buddha saying, getting off the river of time. Getting off the river of time, sitting on its banks, watching the water flow around. That's called Kala Chakra. And people are coming around and around and around with objects and with desire back here to the impure. And then you have niyati, which are these cosmic laws that order everything here on earth. So you can see how these are tattvas of a much higher level, nicely defined in Shaivism, for instance, Kashmiri Shaivism. But you can see how if you look at these mixed pure and impure tattvas, and then look on the right-hand side of the chart to these impure tattvas, you can see how they're getting informed. They're getting their light. That is, the impure tattvas are getting their light from these higher tattvas. So these higher tattvas are deeper within you, like the Purusha and all of the things that fall beyond its kin. So we're going to have to go beyond ordinary mind for that. So raga, vidya, kala, niyati, those are all things to contemplate. Those are alambanas of a mixed nature. They're really wonderful to think about. And these little definitions here will help you. Knowledge of differentiation, cosmic laws and their natural order. People are always talking about what orders things here. Even scientists and physicists and so forth. Where does that order come from? You're looking for it out in nature, out in space. Good luck with that. The source for those things are back inside the mind. And the whole thing is under Maya. So there's where you'll find this strange four-letter word Maya that's really at the top of the list of mixed pure and impure tattvas. Everything is lost in Maya. That is, name, form, time, space, and cause and effect would be a good definition for Maya. Defined here in this box as formless substance of the worlds. Doesn't that give you a deeper clue? There's a substance to this world which is of form. Even a Big Bang would fall there. But if you look beyond that to the original Big Bang, you might say, it would be back here in this inception of Maya, how the first impulse from higher tattvas set the whole thing in motion for the trickle-down effect. Let's look at some of those, because things that are inherently pure by nature are really what we want to end our meditation with. Brahman would be that. We just chanted about that at the beginning of this class. Absolute reality, or original awareness. Mahashakti, Kundalini would be like that. The divine power of Brahman. So there's Brahman and its Shakti. Kutastha would be like that. Brahman as the substratum of all manifestation. So there's an underlying substratum, as mentioned by the Christian mystic Meister Eckhart too, like to think in those terms, that there's this underlying ground of existence, it's called, which is nameless, formless, timeless, spaceless, not in nature, but nature is on top of it. So you can see why then Vivekananda would say something like, you are not in nature, nature's in you, to try and shift that thinking completely around that people have, that they're a body and that they're born, and that they came from matter, came out of matter. It's a whole big problem with lack of faith, atheism and so forth. That strength and higher wisdom, rails against that kind of, we part company with that kind of thinking, that everything came out of a void or emptiness. You cannot get something out of nothing. So that something is not to be looked at as born or dying. It's there all the time. Education is a manifestation of knowledge always within you. Love, devotion, or manifestation of divinity always within you. Prana, the life force that moves yourself, that moves these lower tattvas and these medium tattvas, these mixed tattvas, always a manifestation of that Shakti that's within you. So here's Brahman and Shakti defined. And Kutastha is that underlying substratum, nameless and formless, that holds everything, like a dancer needs a stage, Sri Ramakrishna used to say. Sakshi is a Brahman is witness of all phenomena. The very life force of Ishvara. Then Atman we hear about, that's Brahman, yes. It's appearing via association with the five sheaths, though. You saw some of the ingredients of the five sheaths when you look down here at the impure tattvas, right? So, like the five elements and so forth. That would be the Annamaya Kosha. So, put these systems together, and you should look back on these charts, hear this again, stop it, spend day, an hour, whatever, on meditating on it, seeing it inside yourself, envisioning it there, and making it so that it can come back with its full implications on your consciousness and take you back to the truth of your being, not the appearances. Then there's Ishvara, or sometimes called Antaryami, primeval or firstborn soul, seated in the heart. Even Father of Yoga, Patanjali, mentions that Ishvara is the firstborn soul. It's the most perfect of all beings that appears first. You might want to call that associated with the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, or the word, Om. So, quick view through the meaning of pure, impure in that tradition as compared to what we were growing up with. And also adding in a third category that connects them, mixed pure and impure. I think that's very important to know that there are tattvas beyond physical ones that are in the mind, like cosmic laws, the time itself as a thought in the cosmic mind. These are very important to contemplate these, to fill in what? The relationship between prana and mind, so that there is a relationship there, and you can see it, and you can enjoy it. You can use it to try to transcend things if you need to. So let us consider that, to put an exclamation point upon this whole top run, and lead us into actually examination of the prana, which we're going to do next. Now in prana, and I've looked back on my series of classes over many decades, and seen that I've put it together with different things, with karma and with mantra and so forth, because it needs to be taken out and looked at, this invisible life force that flows. That's why I just chanted, may our bodies experience great health, may our prana flow unimpeded, so that there's no grunties, blocks in it, that the life force that causes us to speak, our speech will be pure and true always and never false. Our eyes will see Brahman and everything and not see Maya and coverings and clouds. Our ears will hear knowledge, hear the truth, instead of lending the ears to untruths and worse. fault finding and various problems like that. And our food will taste natural, will help us get stamina and strength. And all the senses then, the sense of touch too. I think that all of this I'm touching is an expression of Brahman. Okay? And our minds will touch on meditation upon these great things that we just looked at, these pure things. Our mind will touch purity. So with that said, then you can see this teaching of the four states and the vital breath. So when we talk about four states, and remember we're now into purify the prana, control the prana, raise the prana. And this whole Triputi here is being addressed with this next chart or two I'll show you. And we'll get a crash course or a go back to school if we need to with this subject of prana. And also psychic prana, because you see where it's headed. If I want to remind you again, there are three bigger circles here: food, prana, psychic prana, Shakti power, and then perfect mind, original mind, Shiva, or Vivekananda as Shiva. So this is how we're going about this greater, grander, cosmic Vidya cycle that takes us above the ordinary conventional cycles like birth, death, and so forth. But that's precisely what this does in Advaita. You can see the devotee there praying inwardly to the gods, and his three pathways coming out of it. Let's just leave it at three right now, and we'll talk about Turiya at the end, which is a kind of fourth way that's more natural. But you can see that's called Vishva, Viraj, and Otir. So this was a way of talking about waking, dreaming, and deep sleep in Vedic times. So you can see then, and our guide here is really Pipalada, this ancient rishi, and also the Prajna Upanishad, as well as the Parabrahma Upanishad, back to the traditional Vedanta, these great teachings. You can see that Vishwa is defined as experiences fatigue and sleeps. See, so the waking state, we get wiped out, our prana wanes, it needs to be recharged with food, and it needs to be recharged with sleep. This is why you don't call prana Brahman. You make a distinction between those two. And so this waking state is one nadi that should always be opened so that this prana can flow unimpeded, as the Upanishad says. Remember, there are beings who eat very little and sleep very little. That's not necessarily a goal that you want to reach for, but it will happen naturally to souls. Because why? Because they're living on prana now, not just food. And they're when they go to sleep, they sleep for a few minutes and get refreshed. Other people sleep for 8 hours and wake up ragged, restless, unhappy. By their fruits you shall know them. I mean, these souls are living perfectly balanced lives. Why can't you? Why can't we? So this is an obvious example of the truths of these teachings and how we need to get our prana awake, you see, and purify it, control it, direct it, and raise it to higher things. And this leads us towards Shakti, and we'll get into that soon. Remember, we have still three more classes to complete this beautiful cosmic cycle we're on here, this cycle of knowledge. If you go to Viraj, then, Taijasa is there, the dreamer. So experiences fatigue and sleeps there too. You go in and out of waking and dreaming, and you get tired of dreams, and dreams run you ragged too, because you haven't got into deep sleep. That's the next one, pragya. Pragya actually is a word for wisdom. So when you're in deep sleep, yes, and I've had somebody write me last week about this question, because he had heard a speaker talk about it and say that pragya was, ignorance. In deep sleep is you're just in ignorance. Yes, well, you're not aware of everything that's there in your deep sleep because you haven't opened the inner eye of wisdom yet. If you open your inner eye of wisdom, then you will be aware more of a passageway out of dream into a higher state, into the light, if you want to put it that simply. People have tried to explain it, so they just put it like that. You go into the sound of the word, or you go into that vision of light, which is an ocean of pure conscious awareness. So pragya says here, rests in deep sleep like a hawk in its abode. Let's see. That's on a different chart. I'll explain that more towards you soon here. So there you see a fourth nadi, as it were, but we're talking about these three, waking, dreaming, deep sleep right now. If the soul who comes here is already enlightened, they're a bodhisattva, they're a jivan mukta, they're a lumen soul, they're enlightened, then their nadi is always open to this natural state of liberation. They're the living liberated amongst us. Jivan mukti is the word for that in our tradition. They're living liberated. So the nadis are all open, and they're passing in and out of them consciously. So for instance, you wouldn't want to say, well, you have to go back and practice food and practice breathing, and practice meditation and so forth. They might do that as an example for you, but they're not restricted to that anymore. And when their mind, which is the great God, Pipalada says, maybe I should, well, that's still on another chart. The mind is the great God, so that's why prana, sleeps in its nest. Psychic prana, beginning to call that. We'll get to that. And then the awakening happens of spirituality, and there's the suspension of breath, whereas before you were bouncing breath in order to get it suspended, because you don't have lungs in deep sleep. You're not breathing much. You don't have lungs when you're disembodied. So lungs are a part of those impure tattvas and so forth, part of the body, part of the elements. And you just want to use them because the life force is coursing through them. And this is what you want to do, is to have this connection between that and the mind. Beyond brain to mind, we'd often say that in Vedanta. So you can see the individual there, Vyasti. It goes through these four states, Vishva, Taijasya, and Pragya. And Vishva associates with the eyes, Taijasya with the throat, Pragya with the heart, and Turiya with the head. And next to those, wakefulness, dreaming, blissful deep sleep, and immortality. So this is 4 different triputis put here side by side, describing the individual who is awakening these, opening these nadis so that the prana can flow to it, reach the psychic prana in the mind, and then be taken over by Mother Shakti and guided to the crown chakra, if you want to put it in Kundalini way of speaking. And the quote there by Pipalada, when the chitta merges in the highest Brahman, there is still the desire to move about these 4 padas, called Turiya Swapna. Ishvara grants this desire. This play of distinct and non-distinct meditation is called Sarvikalpa and Nirvikalpa. When non-distinction alone exists, that's called Turiyatita, beyond all states. So you can see how deep rishis like Pipalada understood the inner realms and transcending them in a time that was thousands of years BC. So we want to look at that and pay deference and reverence and attention to that dharmic wisdom that delivers these kinds of esoteric teachings to us in ways that we can still understand, even if we don't understand a lot of Sanskrit, or if we weren't raised in India, or even if the Dharma has been covered over for a few lifetimes or a few generations, that we can bring it back, purify it, control it, and raise it. At the collective level of things, there you see those same 4 states. This time they're connected with waking state with Lord Brahma, the second state with Vishnu, and third state with Rudra. That's called Viraj, Sutra, and Bija. And then finally the imperishable Brahman beyond the Trinity. So you're really talking about the Trinity there. and the sacred fire or rites that you enact in order to appease or to propitiate the Trinity. So you're talking about samasti, collective mind, and cosmic mind here at a very high level. So there's lots to do inside. There's lots of things that are similar to outer worship that you're doing now in an internal way inside. And if you can do those consciously in dream and in deep sleep, that's a very good thing. My dream last night, by the way, I was talking to a man, and all of a sudden he started singing, Sadananda Mai Kali Moha Kalerna Mano Mohini. The beautiful Bengali bhajan. And so he sang the first words, Sadananda Mai Kali, oh my mother, full of bliss. And he stopped, and I went on singing it, and he was like shocked. You know that song? And this was all happening in my dream, you see. So when you start performing worship in your dream, and you remember things from your practice that you did in your waking state, then you know that you've opened a nadi that's deeper, and that there are still deeper places to go. This is a way that basically pretty soon you'll be aware in your deep sleep state. It'll be like being a witness. Shall we go back and look at that chart again? Witness consciousness, right? Brahman as witness consciousness is Sakshi. So that dawns on you as a pure tattva, in you, within you. Thou art that. So there's a description of the vital breaths, prana, in its four nadis under the heading of the individual, cosmic, and collective mind, or trinity, in the ancient way of thinking. So beautiful, needs some contemplation and hearing a few times. But here's the final quote on this chart. Pipalada says, the ignorant soul imagines that the three lower nadis to be separate, and thus wanders in bondage. The aware soul, getting wisdom from the noble Vedanta, does not suffer delusion from the three lower states, realizing the oneness of all four, the oneness of all four of them. Isn't it beautifully put that if you, let's put it this way in a contemporary way of saying, if you just live a waking state, you don't believe in your dreams, that they have any validity, or that they're not another state of your awareness. And deep sleep is a complete mystery to you. You don't even think about it, what to speak of meditate on it. You're just left in one nadi. It's like saying you're a materialist nowadays. You only think of matter. That's all you believe in. And so you occupy yourself in the world of matter. Oops, I've got that one nadi open, so I'm wandering in bondage. The way they connect this is with A, U, and M. If you only have A of Om, if you only know that much of the word, then you're wandering in bondage in physical transmigration all the time with your ancestors. But if you master the U of Om and put that together, you've opened a second nadi into radiant dreams as meditations, and now you have mastered A and U of Om. So now you have two nadis to go through. You might say, oh, I think I'll go to heaven. Oh, back to earth for me. Or maybe I can go to higher heaven and know that my essence is formless. Now I've got the third open. The deep sleep doorway has opened, and that's going to open to formless Brahman. That's where the light is. That's where the origin of everything is. That's where the prana is leading to the psychic prana, leading to her, you see. And that's how I can surrender myself at her feet. I should have done that long before. Anyway, I was gleeful when I came upon this quote of Pipalada, describing how people just wander in one nadi, in one world, the physical only. It just describes the predicament that we're in today. I wanted to give you the Advaitic view of prana first. Now let's look at prana at a different level. And how much time do we have here?
20 minutes.
20 minutes is not enough. So let's go to this.
25.
25 minutes, and we may, of course, take a little extra on these shorter classes. We're at the Mana Prana Sambandha way of thinking. Is we're purifying the prana, controlling the prana, and raising the prana, and heading toward the psychic prana. So on the way to that, you frequent holy company, you select a guru, and you secure a mantra. I can comment here that if you selected a mantra back here, and it got you early, we hope that it got you in a way that was traditional, that you received the mantra from an illumined soul, say not from just a book, or a hitchhiker along the road. I've heard of that happening. Or you got it on the beach from some friend. Oh, I heard of this mantra. But you actually got it from a person who recited it for his whole lifetime, his or her whole lifetime, who got it from a guru who was part of a lineage that used that mantra, and who had connected it with the teachings like A-U-M. Because you see, if you had a mantra like Om Namah Shivaya, then that doesn't have any meaning. You should take apart the Om of Om Namah Shivaya, connect that with A-U and M, connect that with your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. You get the gist here, what I'm saying? So there's a lot of meditation to do upon the mantra to enliven it, to light it up, to make it work and operate for you. If you're doing that as you're saying the mantra over food, you see, or a sloka like Brahmarpanam over your food, and then it begins to purify your senses, and then you begin to awaken to the prana, and you're starting towards the psychic prana, along with all the various impediments that are in the way of turning prana into psychic prana. You also have these great benefits. I won't go into you have to think back to a class ago when I was going through that weakness and its concomitance chart to find out what the problems are there with people who don't follow the traditional way and take the mantra inward and connect it to the prana, to the mind. But there are also these great aids here, like selecting a guru, securing a mantra, and then letting that mantra do its work inside so that you awaken to the psychic prana that's flowing inside. Hundreds and thousands of channels are flowing inside of the great mind, as Pipalada was just telling us, leading us inward to these deeper realms, and beyond them too. So this is the adventure of consciousness, it has been called, or the deep experience of samadhis, savikalpa and nirvikalpa, he was calling it back there. And even to such a thing as Turyatita, beyond all states. This all, makes a lot of sense to people who have put together the pieces of this spiritual life and practice. It doesn't make that much sense, or it's not attractive to people who haven't yet. So this is why these connections are very important. So talking about prana first, in that first chart, was more non-dual, right? And then we just talked about it here in terms of individual, collective, and absolute. And now we want to look at it as something that has to do with tanmatras, as we said, and leading to psychic prana. So this chart here is called Prana, Psychic Prana, and Shakti. So this is a kind of jump ahead, but connecting ahead of time to this Shakti power that we're moving towards. If I just get you a little introduction to it, once you have the psychic prana moving, you can conduct worship. Remember, I just gave an example of how, not just in your waking state, but that can go into your dreaming state, where you're attending puja in dreaming state. You're participating with your guru and your sangha in a dreaming state, or you're going to other groups of people who are doing worship and joining in with them. Just like here in this world, people are going here and there to go to churches and temples and Kaaba and so forth. It's the same in the dreaming state. So you have a dreaming body that's going to these consciously, not just mindlessly. I mean, you're not just wandering in the A and the U anymore. You're connected to them, and there's a purpose for this that you're being led towards. So by this time, your psychic prana is beginning to conduct worship. It's beginning to contemplate scripture. accomplish self-surrender and then perform work as worship. This is where the bonds, the links of the chain of attachment to work, snap asunder. As Vivekananda said, duty is the midday sun that's burning the very vitals of humanity. It's necessary for a little time, but in the end, it's like a nightmare. It can become a nightmare. So it needs to be transcended, and this is the process of doing that. Pretty soon work just becomes a service of the Lord that you saw along the way of your practice, which wasn't there in the beginning, which is why you had to take everything and turn it into Brahman, and starting with your food and the eating of your food. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagnau, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena. You know the sloka out of the Gita. Everything is Brahman. I have to see it that way, make it that way, know it that way. Therefore, all of these doorways, if you want to call them that, will open up along all three nadis leading to a fourth nadi. There are these inner channels that you want to awaken up. May our life force flow unimpeded, as the Upanishads say. So here you see this prana, psychic, and prana, psychic, prana, and Shakti chart. The Taittiriya Upanishad says to introduce us to this, the progeny of wise parents who know the prana never perish. They become immortal and attain eternal existence, having known the origin of prana, its advent, place, all-pervasiveness, its fivefold distributions, and its internal aspect. Psychic prana. O prana, he prays to the god of prana, make propitious that body of life force which resides in speech, in the ear, in the eye, and which also pervades the mind. Never depart from us. You can see the beauty of the Upanishads and the rishis therein, knowing about how to connect prana to mind, mind to psychic prana, and psychic prana to Shakti. How they're just already envisioning this as the truth of existence, a fact of existence, and how it's just taking them out of relativity and positing them in the non-dual reality, where they can become acclimatized to that and abide in the Atman, as we say in our tradition. Well, there you see the first thing we notice here in this beautiful image put together, several images, is the Mahashakti, who is living intelligence. She's that light of lights. Call her the Chitti Shakti, because that's how Father of Yoga called her. A dynamic power of the Absolute, the Chitti Shakti. Parusham, Artam, Shunyanam, Gunanam, Prati Prashabha. The sloka goes on at the end of the Yoga Sutras about this Chitti Shakti who takes us to the highest liberation and strikes away name and form and attachment to nature as she does so. Just be able to let that go and become your formless essence again. Formlessness is full, not empty. So emptiness is a stage that leads to fullness. And there you see behind the Mahashakti's living intelligence the single eye of non-duality. How are they connected? There are beautiful ways of actually relating to scriptures, but you can also sing about it. There's one devotee of Sri Ramakrishna who sang nicely about that. Manavarana Sashana Ankushahe Nardatrana Tari Hari Chakshushahe Gunagana Parayana Devagane Guru Deva Dayakara Dina Jane. Kula Kundalini Guma Banja Kahe Redi Granti Vidarana Karakahe Mama Manasa Chanchala Ratra Dine Guru Deva Dayakara Dina Jane. Goes on with 8 verses like that. Basically, he's trying to explain to us, this devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, that it is by subtleties and austerities offered to the Lord within that the mind comes under our control. The Lord embodies himself on earth to show us the way. Even the gods and goddesses praise him with divine hymns. O divine teacher, kindly bestow compassion on thy humble devotee. You can see he's already at the deep self-surrender level here. But the next verse pertains more to what we're studying here. Kula kundalini guma banjakahe is a beautiful verse. It means the powerful spiritual force at the base of the spine awakens at thy touch. And the bondage of desire disappears when you grant detachment and discrimination. Unfortunately, my mind remains restless despite all these blessings. O teacher divine, kindly shower compassion on thy humble devotee. So, right there is mentioned this contemplation of scriptures, you see, that he's trying to do, and the worship he's trying to do to attain this self-surrender. And as realized that there's a powerful force at the base of the spine that awakens at thy touch. It has awakened with people who haven't felt the physical touch, who just feel the touch of their purified mind with Brahman, or with Atman, or with Ishvara, with this Shakti, with the witness. All those things we talked about as being inherently pure inside of you, that's a touch that you can have, whether the avatar is embodied on earth or not. So nothing should stand in the way of you receiving that touch of grace, kripa siddha, the perfection of grace that is available to you if you will only eat good food, bless it with a mantra, straighten your posture, even your breath, awaken the prana, connect it to the psychic prana into your mind. Prana, manaha, sambandha. All a beautiful system here that we're looking at. Now, in the remaining minutes, a lot to accomplish here. It's not that we can't use this as the introduction to our first class of the third part of this series, a few Sundays away. But at least we can show you side by side the prana and the psychic prana. First of all, then, in the chart that's our main study, let's look at this, because it's right here, underneath and next to Lord Shiva. You see this? The Apana facilitates evacuation and generation. Samana distributes the offered food. Prana itself operates and infills the senses. Through the main nadi, the udana carries the soul back and forth to the various worlds. And Vyana pervades and moves through the many thousands of gross and subtle nerve endings, nerve channels. This is all Prashna Upanishad, one of the few Upanishads that provides for explaining the prana, which mysteriously is only inferred in the 24 cosmic principles, and you don't hear a lot about it. But here's the 5 pranas: Apana, and you can see them over here in this chart when we get to it. Apana, Prana, Udana, Vyana, and Samana. So that's right out of the Upanishad. So this isn't being taught to you by a Hatha Yoga perspective, you see. It's being taught to you by the Vedas, by the Upanishads. So they saw the prana way back when. And by the way, this is the gross prana. Where are we going to categorize it? Ashuddha. It's not pure. So it's far away from the source. You need to get a hold of it. As we said in this chart, we're saying equalize your breathing with it and purify it, control it and raise it. This is done by these various spiritual exercises you're doing, which get more and more refined and deeper as you follow the course, as you follow the tradition, as I hear my teacher voice echoing that in my head. Sometimes he'd even almost yell at us, follow the tradition, because he'd see the people drifting away as if they could guide themselves, or they knew everything already after 1 or 2 years of practice. didn't even know the meaning of their own mantra yet. And you can walk up to your students nowadays and say, what's this mean? What's this mean? They look at you blankly. Some of them may have been studying it for 30 years under you. You ought to be able to put it in words and express it and talk about it, ask questions about it if you don't know. It's called satsang. We were doing that yesterday morning. So we had a few very powerful questions coming from some young students I was happy to see. And even some discourse by one of them, just like started talking about it and just started expanding on it marvelously. Ah, there you are. That's what you want to see. You know, people that can discourse on the Dharma in this day and age, in our country, in the West. Now we're getting it. Now we're seeing that all Americans don't have to be straw and fire. And of course I'm talking about a couple of Europeans there who were with us too, but Europeans are Americans. Americans were Europeans. So basically we got to get this Western culture together and look at that knowledge, which is the essence of our education. So that has to be a higher education we're looking at. So I wanted to show you the 5 pranas. Here they are here. And you know, this chart, as we finish up with it, is very beautiful. I put it together a few months ago because I wanted to describe the psychic prana, because it's nothing really much on it in the scriptures. It's just intimated. So if you look there at what we just said, there you see the 5 pranas. There's a meditator sitting in the middle there of a circle. That's the body, basically. But it's not, it's the soul inside that body, which is meditating on a light. And that light is trying to connect the gross pranas to the psychic pranas. That's a mystery how that happens in a way. But you can see here then, if apana is exhalation, as the Prajnapanishad told us, prana is inhalation, udana is inspiration, samana is assimilation, and vyana is pervasion. I tried to get 5 good words out of English that could rhyme as well as show what's happening with your 5 gross pranas. You're breathing, you're holding, you're letting out, you're aspiring, and there's an overall prana that's in everything. You see it shining in water, shining in fire. You see it there in the sky. It's this outer elements, outer senses connector. You see, the people who love nature or begin to breathe, begin to taste food in the right way, begin to get exquisite enjoyment out of their lives. They've made this connection, mukhya prana, between these outer pranas and this inner prana. The inner prana is like this. What happens then to prana when it turns into these subtle pranas? There you see, as I just said, udana is inspiration. So upwards, inwards would be a better way of saying, goes this prana leading to the psychic prana, which refines your wisdom. Then you can see, going around the left-hand side, psychic apana. That's apana that was exhalation, right? You're breathing out. It expels your negativities. Remember, breathe in. What do you say? I am Brahman. Hold. What do you say? I will always be Brahman. Breathe out. What do you say or think? I am not the world. So this is the Vedic breathing exercise, not just the Hatha Yoga breathing exercise. It takes you to a deeper state of connecting the gross pranas to the psychic prana if you think this way as you enact it. So I'm not just breathing in, say, I'm breathing in and thinking about taking in wisdom. I'm not just breathing out. I'm breathing out and thinking all negativities must go. As you go around this quintuplication, psychic udana refines your wisdom. We just said that. So this is the inward moving inspiration. If you think it, it will be so. If you read it and it's out of the scriptures, it is. And I am that. So all of these deeper connections of non-duality begin to become very important and very beneficial to you if you know the non-dual truth. This is why Ramakrishna said to Vivekananda, give everyone the non-dual truth first, cut off the head and the tail and serve the body of the fish. And then let them think about that while they consider the Dharma, while they do these reconnections to their true self, do these practices. This is why you can't just jump to Advaita. You do have to do practice. Even though your soul's perfect, your Atman is perfect, you can't just say, I am perfect, and walk away from it, and then commit the same old errors and mistakes and find yourself reborn again on the physical planet with sufferings, miseries, and ignorance in your mind. You have to really purify. I mean, this is purifying, controlling, and raising the prana, isn't it? And then psychic samana, so we said samana helps you assimilate things. So this digests the wisdom that you read in the scriptures and the wisdom that you hear coming from my mouth. See? So if you hear the teacher, the acharya, the guru, the preceptor, however you think of them, your friend, your eternal companion, saying these words of the Dharma to you, then you really hear them and you put them into place. You're using the psychic apana the psychic samana at that point, and you're digesting this wisdom. Feed a pigeon corn and peas, Sri Ramakrishna said, you think you did a good deed. Pick up the pigeon later, all the corn and peas stuck in its throat, in its crop, right? You realize that it didn't digest them into its stomach. So that's sometimes what they use as a metaphor for students who just hear but don't contemplate and then don't realize. That can be a blockage in a nadi that's moving inward, that you just stay at one place and think you understand, but there's a lot more to do. Then there's psychic jnana. And if jnana was pervasive prana, it means a prana that's there always in everything, then psychic jnana would be that which permeates your thoughts. It's holding your thoughts, sort of a doorway into sakshi. And basically, that prana is helping you see yourself as a witness of everything, because it's an unmoving prana. So you have, even in the psychic prana, in the mixed pure and impure tattvas, you have this underlying ground of existence that isn't completely clear to you yet. See, it's not witness yet, but it's developing into witness. And this is called detachment. And detachment happens in 12 stages. So you can see how this is then very important. So we actually did cover this. This is another way of looking at some of the 24 cosmic principles in these two bubbles. You know, you have body and you have pranas and you have the psychic prana and tanmatras and all of this there. The quote above it says, that one who knows the imperishable, in which rest the mind, the senses, and the pranas, verily becomes omniscient and enters into all. Prajnapanishad comes forth to say that to us. And remember the top quote again, the progeny of wise parents who know the prana never perish. They become immortal and attain eternal existence. So that's the children that come out of dharmic parents that teach the children at an early age this great secret about the prana. If they come to know the prana, they can conduct themselves into the realm of the ancestors, beyond the realm of the ancestors, to the realm of the gods, beyond the realm of the gods, into the great self, and merge themselves like a hailstone in an ocean into Brahman. So that's how it's put there in the Upanishads. It's a beautiful way of saying it. And then always have the Divine Mother, over here, always have the Divine Mother, the living consciousness, open that third eye of non-duality. And in that way, you would always be singing things like this. If you remember the Shakti, that is, you'd be singing Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Jaya Swami Vivekananda, Jaya Shri Raka, Toyananda Yogananda, Om Kali Ma, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Joy Tir Gamaya, Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya, Abir Abir Ramayeti, Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukam Tenamam Pahi Necham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us, O Mother, from darkness to light. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real. And lead us from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. O peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Japa Hari Om Tat Sat.